And our top point comes in the form of chaos in the NFL. All right. We put a lot of thought into this. We're not a hot takey show. We don't come in every day and give you just these wild hot takes from out of nowhere. But I'm going to be honest. We started having our conversations about the Dolphins and what went wrong and what's going wrong. And everybody's heard Tua's comments about leadership and guys showing up late. And you look at the numbers for Tua and you look at the way this Dolphins season is going. Caroline Fenton, is it time for Tua Tagovailoa to get benched in Miami?
Oof, when you're having this conversation going into week 7, things are rough. But things are incredible. And that's how bad they are in Miami right now. It's not just the fact that they've won one game so far this season. It's also Tua's comments. Those were bad. I really do not think that we can overstate how damning of a look it was for the Miami Dolphins when your starting quarterback gets up to the podium and talks about how bad their leadership is on that team. If we're going to have the bench Tua conversation, we have to ask ourselves, genuinely, let's dig deep. Let's really think about this. Are the Dolphins better without him? Is the devil that you don't know, Zach Wilson, Quinn Ewers, the 2 other quarterbacks in that quarterback room, are they going to be better? Are they a better path forward for this Dolphins team than Tua is right now? And honestly, Fitz, maybe. Like, I always try and caution fans. The devil that you don't know is not guaranteed to be better than the devil that you do. But Tua threw 3 picks last week. Tua's had a turnover problem. What has Tua done so far this season that you think, man, there's only a handful of guys in this league that can do that? I genuinely, Fitz, I don't know. You do have to caution yourself because once you make this move, you can't go back. Once you bench the quarterback, you're not going back to that quarterback. You know the old adage, if you have 2 quarterbacks, in this case, maybe even 3, maybe even none. But if you have multiple quarterbacks, you have none in this league. So we have to be careful with that. But I think there is a very fair, there's enough evidence. It's fair to say that the Dolphins could be better off without Tua than they are with.
So I don't think this is the time to bench Tua. I think that the future between the Dolphins and Tua needs to end. But I think that right now, part of what we're looking at, like think about what we're talking about. We talk about quarterback redemption all the time. Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, like these are the guys that we lift up all the time. Daniel Jones is guys that suddenly turn their careers around. Each of the examples I just gave you, though, had an advantage in that turnaround that Zach Wilson would not have if he was put on the field today. And that advantage is an offseason, right? Like Daniel Jones went to the Colts, and they made it clear that he was going to have to compete with Anthony Richardson, but that was never really much of a competition. He got an offseason to get comfortable with being the starter of that team. Baker Mayfield, in fact, bounced from team to team to team when he was just coming in for a week, and it never really worked. But then when he gets an offseason with Tampa Bay, everything changes. Sam Darnold certainly had flashes for that second in San Francisco, but it truly changed his entire trajectory when he got an offseason. I think that there's something to the Miami Dolphins need to figure out what their quarterback situation looks like. And maybe Tua would be better away from the Miami Dolphins. Maybe this relationship just isn't working anymore, and that's okay. But I don't think making the change right now makes sense because you're not giving Zach Wilson an offseason. You're basically just putting Zach Wilson into what's already a chaotic situation, or Quinn Ewers, and saying, save us. And that's just a tough spot to put a quarterback in if you're trying to find your redemption project. But from the flip side of it is like you got to ask yourself, what do you want out of the future at the quarterback position? I think right now it's fair to say that whatever we thought Tua and the Dolphins would be, and I'm not even talking about health, I'm not talking about concussions, I'm not talking about any of that for a minute. Just talking about the way Tua Tagovailoa is playing the quarterback position currently is not good enough to be a high-quality starter. So I don't believe anymore that the Miami Dolphins have their future in the building at the quarterback position, which means they're going to have to identify their future. If you're sitting Tua because you want to identify Zach as your future, I would argue you're not really giving Zach Wilson the best opportunity to show what he can do anyway. You need to sit down and make a calculated plan of what you think the future of the quarterback situation looks like and make that decision long-term. But I don't think short-term, even sitting Tua actually helps that, Caroline.
The future of the quarterback position is not Tua. Like, it's not Zach Wilson, it's not Quinn Ewers, and I think we all know that. I think we've all kind of already known that. I think we knew that going into this season that, man, didn't take very long for us to think about the cap hit the Dolphins would take if they decided to move on from Tua, which is sizable. Like, the Dolphins would be in absolute cap hell if and when they decide to move on from Tua. And I hear everything that you're saying, and it's all very logical. But I have to think about Mike McDaniel. Like, put yourself in Mike McDaniel's shoes. His seat is incredibly hot. I mean, now that Brian Callahan is out the door in Tennessee, Mike McDaniel probably has the hottest seat of anyone in the NFL. If you're Mike McDaniel, your two options are continue down this road with Tua. And look, the Dolphins are paying Tua a lot of money that it would be incredibly hard to justify just moving on from him for S's and G's for no reason, just to, try and salvage some part of the season that feels incredibly unsalvageable. But if you're Mike McDaniel, you'll say, I can stick with Tua. I can stick with the quarterback that got me here. I can stick with the quarterback that, a couple of years ago, Dolphins had the number one, offense in the National Football League because of Tua. Or I can use every single tool at my disposal to just try and maybe dig up a little bit of hope. Try and maybe dig up just a small light at the end of the tunnel to save my own ass. Because if I'm Mike McDaniel, you're probably out the door sooner rather than later. I know that there were reports that, the Dolphins wanted to stick with the current leadership. That's what, front offices say all the time. If I'm Mike McDaniel, though, don't you want to try and save this season, save your job, save your career as much as you possibly can? Tua's not going to save that for you. I don't know if Zach Wilson will. Like, that's a pretty scary position to be in, to say, wow, my job, the future of my job hinges on Zach Wilson. Scary place to be in. But we know that's not going to be Tua, right?
Well, I mean, yes. I also think Tua makes a scapegoat, though. Mike McDaniel can go to management and say, sorry, I don't know what happened to my quarterback. He went to hell in a handbasket, and we couldn't win games because of it. And Tua sort of becomes the scapegoat for all of the problems. I don't want to say I'm hopeful for Zach Wilson, because that's an overstatement, right? Like, I didn't love Zach Wilson when he was drafted, why he was drafted. I had the chance to interview him after his big season, and when I asked him, hey, what happened? What changed for you in college? Like, why did you suddenly have this explosive season, which, by the way, happened during COVID when everybody was making their schedule as they went, basically. I mean, Zach looked at me straight up and said, I don't know. Things just sort of clicked. Well, I don't love it when a quarterback doesn't know why things sort of clicked. So I think he was overdrafted from the outset. That being said, the Jets failed Geno Smith, and then he went somewhere else and was really good. The Jets had Sam Darnold, then he went somewhere else, and he was really good. The Jets had Aaron Donald, good Lord, they wish. They had Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers went somewhere else, and suddenly looks like his career's in a much better place. The Jets got Justin Fields, and Justin Fields looks even worse. Like, what if the stink isn't Zach Wilson, but the stink is simply the inability for the New York Football Jets to do anything at the quarterback position? Like, maybe when we look at everybody that's been run out of the building for New York and seen that there's been so many success stories when they're no longer playing for the Jets, maybe take a flyer on Zach Wilson.
There is a very high likelihood of that, because the Jets is kind of where not just quarterbacks' careers go to die, but just careers go to die. The scene from the first Toy Story movie of that kid Sid, who like puts Barbie heads on robots and like cuts their hair off and like grills dolls. Like, that's the Jets with quarterbacks. That's like where Sid's backyard is where toys go to die. The Jets are where quarterbacks go to die. So I do totally see kind of the thought process going there of, look, Zach Wilson's not the only quarterback to struggle in New York. Sam Darnold, my goodness, we all just kind of wrote Sam Darnold off as a bust in New York. Now, when we talked to Frank Schwab yesterday, he thinks the Seahawks can be the best team in the league with Sam Darnold under center. So I do think that there is some truth to that. And to your point about Tua being a scapegoat for Mike McDaniel, that can absolutely be the conversation with Chris Grier, the general manager in Miami, and all of the leadership in Miami. But if I am Chris Grier, I'm ownership in Miami, I think, well, it's a whole heck of a lot easier to fire you than it is to fire a quarterback, because we can just fire Mike McDaniel. If we want to fire Tua Tagovailoa, that's going to cost us about $100 million. So my message to Mike McDaniel would be, that's your job. Like, that is your job to figure out the quarterback. That is your job to put the quarterback in a position to succeed. And if you can't do that, then you can't do your job anymore. And maybe that's not the case. Maybe Mike McDaniel isn't the problem in Miami. Maybe it is much more Tua more than it is Mike McDaniel, but I can justify firing a coach. It is much harder to justify going into cap purgatory for the next 4 to 5 years, quarterback purgatory for the next 4 to 5 years, than it is to just fire the coach. Now, I don't think that would be the correct move. I do think that I think they're both probably the problem in Miami, but you can at least justify firing the coach much more than you can justify dishing out $100 million in cap space.
Plenty of football left for the Dolphins to play this year, and that, I think, will be a bigger determining factor in the fate of both Tua and Mike McDaniel. If they finish this year with 3 wins, it looks a lot different than if they finish this year with 6 or 7. All right. From the action on the field to conspiracy theories around it, if you believe that the refs have been fixing the NFL for the Kansas City Chiefs, boy, you're having a good day. We'll tell you why next. The Chiefs had 0 penalties against the Lions. It's the first time a team has had no penalties since Week 18 in 2023, which obviously is going to make fans yell and scream about officiating, and that's just the beginning of the chaos we're about to share with you. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports Daily. A UTEP study, University of Texas, El Paso, a UTEP study was done from 2015 to 2023. And I want to read from this so I get it actually correct for you. And it shows that our findings suggest that when the league's financial health is at stake, rule enforcement may shift subtly to protect market appeal. The study showed that during the playoffs, which the research team identified as the most commercially valuable period, penalties against opposing defenses of the Chiefs' offense were significantly more likely to result in first downs, cover more yardage, and fall into subjective categories such as roughing the passer or pass interference. Furthermore, UTEP went back and they looked at the dynasty of the Patriots and did not find similar penalty findings in the playoffs. So, Caroline Fenton, what we're getting is a statistical study here. Researchers, UTEP, don't know why they didn't have anything better to do with their time, but UTEP coming in and finding empirical data that shows some sort of calls going towards the Chiefs. Are you buying an NFL officiating sort of conspiracy here to prop up the Kansas City Chiefs?
I'd just like to know, like, what Ravens or Bills or Bengals fan works at UTEP and felt so burned.
Raiders fans,
Raiders
fans out there for sure.
Raiders fans or Chargers fans or Broncos fans, like who felt so vindicated by this to feel the need to take a deep dive into it. Look, and I don't want to, poke holes in the study, but I think in order to fairly talk about this, we have to ask ourselves, did they look at all 32 teams in the league? How many different factors were taken into account? Like, are you just looking at the calls that went the Chiefs' way or maybe went against the Chiefs' way? Are you looking at every single call made against all 32 teams in the National Football League? For this to have true integrity and for us to have a fair and nuanced discussion about this, I think it's necessary to look at all 32 teams in the league. Are they looking at all factors? Is it, playoff game, non-playoff game? Is it, a home game, away game? What's the weather? Like, all of these factors, I think, matter. Now, if they did and it still came across that the Chiefs got all of these favorable calls, then maybe we can have that discussion. But I think when we talk about the Chiefs and how referees call Chiefs games, I have to think that so much of this is just confirmation bias. So much of the football society and football fans out there already believe that Chiefs get favorable calls. So anytime a call goes the Chiefs' way, whether it's fair or not, whether it's an obvious hold, an obvious offsides, an obvious PI, everyone's going to say, oh, Chiefs get all the calls. Oh, Chiefs get all the calls. But when calls go against the Chiefs, against the Chiefs' way, then all of a sudden we don't put a whole lot of stock into that because it doesn't confirm what we already believe to be true. So I think we need to be really, really careful with this and really ask ourselves how nuanced this study really is.
I'm going to rip this thing apart, and I'm not even going to be gentle. First and foremost, Roger Goodell says it's a ridiculous theory for anyone who might take it seriously. He is correct. Do you believe that the NFL sat down and said, of all of the brands in sports that we need to make sure officials give a bias to help that brand, it's the Kansas City Chiefs and not, let's say, I don't know, the Dallas Cowboys or the New York Giants or any of the teams out there that have massive, massive, massive fan bases? Remember, there was a period not that long ago where the Chiefs weren't who the Kansas City Chiefs are, at least as a brand, at least in the court of public perception. So to me, step number one is why the Chiefs? Why? If you go all the way back to 2015, why did the Chiefs suddenly get the kiss from the league over every other brand that could make more money? It doesn't make any sense. Number two, I talked to Jack Del Rio, who used to be the coach of the Raiders one time. We worked together at ESPN for a period, and we sat in the halls. And I asked him flat out, I was like, hey, why so many extra calls on the Raiders all the time? And he gave me a breakdown I'll never forget. He said, sometimes what people don't realize is that you're good as the team you're against and you're beat on certain plays. Sometimes you just have to commit a penalty. When you are beat at the line of scrimmage and you're going to give up a touchdown, you get handsy. When you're not as big, when you're not as fast, when you're not as disciplined, when you're not as strong, when you're not as talented, the best thing you can do sometimes to mitigate the disaster is try and get away with a little penalty here or there. We forget that sometimes. That's part of the context. And then most importantly, Caroline, while they're going to sit here and they're going to give numbers, I guess my question is, did they sit down with any former official and ask the most important question of all, which was how many of these calls were bad calls? Is it not possible that, frankly, over the course of years, when you're taking on guys like Tyreek and he's running down the field, you get more defensive holding because at the time Tyreek was so fast, nobody could stop him? Is it not possible that this Sunday when the Raiders play the Chiefs, Rashee Rice is running wide open, any corner that realizes they're about to get beat is just going to grab onto him? Is it not possible? Like, you can't just tell me that there were penalties committed without then having officiating experts sit down and analyze every one of the calls to figure out what was hit, what wasn't hit, what should have been hit, what was that's the part of the logic that isn't here. So you're just giving me numbers, but you're not giving me any but UTEP's giving us numbers without giving us any context to how those numbers came about and if those numbers are actually incorrect.
And look, it's all fair points because to your point though about the brands, that if there was one team that's going to get quote unquote propped up by the refs, why would it be the Chiefs? Well, I mean, the Dallas Cowboys don't have Patrick Mahomes. The New York Giants don't have Patrick Mahomes. The Cowboys and the Giants haven't been to as many Super Bowls or won as many Super Bowls as the Kansas City Chiefs have. So I understand brand and I understand, value of certain franchises. That Kansas City is not nearly as sexy of a market as New York or Dallas or Los Angeles, but it's incredibly sexy when you have that man right there. And if we want to look at anecdotes, if you just want to look at things, under a microscope, let me just say this. I don't think that the Chiefs get all of these favorable calls. I do not think that we should, nitpick the Chiefs Super Bowls or the Chiefs dynasty because they've gotten so many calls that have gone their way that the rest have just won them those Super Bowls. No, they have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Andy Reid and Chris Jones, and other teams don't. But I will look at that quote unquote catch from Travis Kelce this past weekend that hit the ground before it hit Travis Kelce's hands. And then the exact same call went against the Buffalo Bills when if you slow that catch down, it was a catch. It didn't touch the grass. It was close, but it was a catch. And that was ruled not a catch. Travis Kelce's was ruled a catch. Now, I'm not saying it's because it was Travis Kelce or because it was the Chiefs. When you have different officiating crews, different games are going to be called differently. Should they be? Of course not. Everything should be standardized. Everything should be consistent in the NFL. But refs are humans. They're not robots. They're not AI. They're humans, and humans have implicit bias. Like that is what that is. And humans just call things differently. There's different perspectives. There's different, replay. But that is an anecdote, and that is one example that we can nitpick under a microscope where a call went the Chiefs' way and did not go the Buffalo Bills' way. That's one example, though. And I think that's an example of confirmation bias because we can nitpick that because it's the Chiefs. How many other times can we nitpick catches that were called no catches and in another game they were? Like, I'm sure that happens all the time in football. PI, catches, offsides, holdings, whatever it might be, that if we want to put certain plays under a microscope, we can do that and probably show several inconsistencies in officiating. We just happen to do it so much more so with the Chiefs because everybody already believes that calls go their way.
So a couple of things here. If you've ever sat at a sports bar without a vested interest in a game, and you sit at a table, like if you're sitting at a table this week and you got a Raiders fan on one side and a Chiefs fan on the other side, and you don't care about either team, and you're just watching the game, you were going to hear each side throughout the course of a game yell loudly, to your point, that's definitely a catch. No, that's not a catch at all. Well, if you take all your bias out and you're just watching it, you still may not agree with either side of it. So it is possible for one ref to see something as a catch and another ref to see it clearly not as a catch. It's possible for two people trained in the same exact job to see things differently. That's why, my God, like, look at medicine. What's the first thing that happens when you go to a doctor if you have something serious wrong? They say, go get a second opinion. Because even doctors can look at data and give you two opinions on what to do with your heart. So, of course, two people can have two different opinions on whether or not it's a catch, and it doesn't mean there's a bias. But this is the most important part about the concept of bias, Caroline. This year, according at least to the worldwide internet, this year there were 4 officials that were downgraded. Basically, they were sent down from the NFL. They were offered jobs in college instead. They lost their NFL job. I think of those moments, and I think about the fact that everyone that thinks that there's a conspiracy theory. Let me ask you: do you think every single official doesn't realize how much money they could make today to simply come out and tell the world that they're like one official could make millions of dollars if they simply went to any press outlet and said, I will give you the exclusive story on exactly how we fix games for the Kansas City Chiefs. Millions of dollars. Every conspiracy theorist that thinks that the league is rigged. Do you believe every person involved in the history of rigging the league never took the temptation of a payout to talk about it? Never had a medical issue with their family where they were like, you know what? I really need these medical bills. I'm just going to tell the world finally that this is fixed. Like, we live in a society where if there were this great big theory to protect the Chiefs, then every official in the history of the NFL for the last 10 years involved in this study would have to be aware of an edict from the league to protect the Kansas City Chiefs. And if they're aware of that edict, they could make so much damn money telling the world about it There's no way you keep him quiet.
Yeah, it would be ridiculous to think that.
Yeah, we'll keep breaking down the conspiracy theories. We got to get to the next time. Dan Wolken is with us. We're going to talk to Dan about everything going on. We got big news yesterday in the golf world. Plus, we'll hit everything in college football with Dan. We'll do it next. Tiger Woods announces his 7th back surgery. No timeline for a potential return. That's the news we got yesterday that obviously had everybody shocked a little bit as we try and figure out some way that we can get to enjoy more Tiger in our lives. Joining us now, Dan Wolken. He's going to talk a little bit college football in a second, joining us now on the show. But, Dan, let's start with that. Senior writer for Yahoo Sports. First, what was your reaction to seeing the Tiger news?
Yeah, I mean, obviously feel bad for him to have to go through yet another surgery. Obviously, his body has just completely broken down at this point. And, for me, like you kind of wonder, what's the point of all this? Why are you trying to continue to come back when you're not going to be able to compete? And it just seems like you're causing yourself a lot of pain with all these rehab stints. My guy, we've seen you win a lot. We don't need to see you anymore.
To that point, I mean, yeah, we've seen him win so much. Like, I don't even remember a time before Tiger Woods. It would be crazy to think about a game of golf without Tiger Woods. So at 49 years old, is Tiger Woods done?
Yeah, look, Tiger for a long time said, I'm not interested in the senior tour. I'm not going to do that with the 50 and up crowd. But he seems to still be driven to compete in some way. So I would not be surprised if at some point you see him play the Champions Tour where the distances are shorter. You don't have to walk as far. Obviously, the competition is not like it is on the PGA Tour. Let's be real. I mean, he may have a ceremonial spot in the Masters or the British Open, US Open, but he's not going to compete at that level anymore. Those days are over. He just physically can't walk 72 holes. And it's not even a golf swing thing at this point. But, can he get out there, play a 54-hole tournament, maybe a little bit more fun and less competition? Yeah, it's possible. But I almost wish he would have just shut it down after he won the Masters in 2019. That would have been an unbelievable way for him to end his career. And I just hate to see him having to go through all of these surgeries and the rehab, and it just gets so much harder as you get older.
Is there anything, I mean, the Ryder Cup, things like that, are there other things he can do to become sort of the face and advocate of this sport without necessarily having to play?
Well, there's certainly been a lot of talk about whether he could be in the mix to be the Ryder Cup captain in 2027. Obviously, the United States has really struggled to figure out that event in particular. I think he would be a viable person to put out front there if he wants to devote the time. That's a pretty time-consuming job. So he will stay involved. You've got the TGL, the Tiger Golf League, that popped off last year, and I think had some pretty interesting results. Going forward, it has potential to be pretty interesting part of the golf calendar in some way. But, as a serious competitor, no, but certainly golf wants him to be involved in some way at some level for the rest of his life, however long he wants to do it.
Well, not only is golf your wheelhouse, so is college football. So we'll go from Tiger to Tigers, Auburn Tigers, the Old South's oldest rivalry this past weekend, Georgia and Auburn. But there has been a lot of backlash about how that game was officiated. Auburn fans feel like that goal line stand that they got over the goal line, that should have been a touchdown. What did you make of the officiating and that touchdown no call in Georgia Auburn this past weekend?
Yeah, I thought he crossed the plane, but the referees and the video people disagreed. I don't know exactly what they saw because the SEC is not doing what the ACC is doing now, which is, if you've been watching these ACC games, they are allowing us to listen in to the conversation between the on-field refs and the replay booths. I think it's been an unbelievable addition to the ACC games to just have that window into what they're looking at. What do they see? The same kind of question we would have loved to have known the answer to last Saturday in that Georgia-Auburn game. The SEC has not gone there yet. I was at a press availability with SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey a couple weeks ago where he was asked about that and was very non-committal other than just, hey, we're looking at it. But I think the data, at least from a fan perspective, is pretty clear that this is one of those elements you can put into a broadcast that not only enhances the viewer experience, but also maybe protects the league a little bit from, this sort of conspiracy theory stuff that you get when there's a bad call or a really bad call that we just can't figure out. So I wish the SEC would do that. Refereeing is what it is. Mistakes are going to be made. I think the SEC overall has some of the best college football officials in the country. But that replay situation, I think every conference should do that, and it would eliminate probably 30-40% of kind of the nonsense that you hear around some of these games.
Yeah, Dan, I actually talked to somebody behind the scenes at ESPN that said that the SEC just doesn't want to spend the money to do that per game, which just feels staggering to me considering how much money. It's one plug from a truck to get that. I don't understand.
Yeah, I think that's what people just. Yeah, go ahead.
We're all waiting. I'll just move us on. All right, let's get to James Franklin. All right, everybody wants to talk about James Franklin. The offset language became a big issue over the last couple of days. So now that we have this information, make it make sense to everybody. What does it really look like for James Franklin as far as having to go out and find a job and what that means for his buyout?
Yeah, so a lot of these contracts for college football coaches, if they get fired, include this duty to mitigate clause, which means they have to give their best effort to go out and find other employment. Now, where it can get tricky is exactly what the language says and how it could be interpreted if there's maybe a little bit of ambiguous wording in there. We've seen that before. I remember several years ago, Brett Bielema, when he got fired at Arkansas, took kind of this low-paying internship almost at the New England Patriots and was only making, maybe $100,000. And Arkansas said, okay, that's fine, but you're not mitigating the way you should be mitigating. You should be a college coach making a couple $1 million. And it ended up being a bit of a legal fiasco, and they had to work something out. So I don't know exactly what the precise language is, but I think the reality for James Franklin is he is young enough and he is still well regarded enough. And I still think he's driven enough that he will be a Division I FBS, probably even a Power 4 head coach either next year or the year after. I don't see him taking that much time off. And I think what Penn State is hoping is that $8 million a year buyout clause that they're on the hook for right now will maybe become more like $3 or $4 million a year if Franklin gets a job that would pay him $3 or $4 million. That amount would essentially be deducted from the buyout money that Penn State owes. So that's what they're hoping. But again, if James Franklin just kind of wants to go to the beach for a couple years and say, hey, listen, I looked for a job and I couldn't find one, That's where it gets into a little weird legal territory, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think Franklin will coach soon.
Is there a job that you think is a great fit for Franklin?
Well, honestly, the job that I think would be an unbelievable fit for him is not open right now, but could be, which is North Carolina. When you look at what he brings to the table as a coach, and he was at Vanderbilt before he was at Penn State, he recruits that Northeast Mid-Atlantic corridor. I think he's the kind of personality that would fit in really well with kind of the movers and shakers on the North Carolina scene. James Franklin's a really smart guy, a really cerebral guy. I think he would fit in that environment very, very well. Now, is the North Carolina job going to come open? We don't know exactly, but I think we all know what a disaster it's been with Bill Belichick. But if I were to just place James Franklin in his next job in sort of the perfect fit, that would be the one I would look at.
And I know Penn State is hoping that making a decision in the middle of the season to move on from James Franklin gives that program the same kind of, revival that we've seen at UCLA. I mean, UCLA moves on from Deshaun Foster. They didn't have a single lead with Deshaun Foster at the helm. Now, UCLA hasn't just won, but has dominated their last 2 games, led by their offense, led by the greatest head of hair that I think that we have in college football, and Jerry Neuheisel. Let me throw out a wild scenario. If we look at the rest of UCLA's schedule, do we see a path to the college football playoff?
Okay, let's not get too crazy here. They have to go on the road to Indiana. They have to go on the road to Ohio State. No. Now, could they be a bit of a spoiler here down the stretch? Yeah, like they're playing good football. How long will it last? There's going to be a little bit of a sugar high and then come down effect probably at some point. They have a good chance to beat Maryland this coming weekend at home. But I think when they go to Indiana the week after that, I think the fairy tale ends there. I mean, Indiana's a wagon, as the kids would say. And you saw what they did last week against Oregon on the road. They're clearly one of the best teams in the country. And I think they will destroy UCLA in a couple weeks.
To that point, and look, it is a fun little fairy tale. It's college football. Why not? Anything can happen. But to that point on Indiana, can you make a case that they're the best team in the country?
Yeah. I mean, hey, they went on the road and went to beat Oregon and didn't just win the game. They beat them down. And that was arguably the most impressive performance of any team we've seen this season. I think Ohio State is probably better, but they maybe haven't been quite as impressive as Indiana overall. So, as good as Indiana was last year making the college football playoff, they are better this year, and it's not a fluke. They're winning the line of scrimmage, and when you make that kind of statement and can beat a team that's got some of the best athletes in the Big Ten at Oregon, I think that says a lot about the quality of team they are. We're way beyond the point where it's a fluke. I don't know that they're the best team in the country, but they are clearly a legitimate national championship contender right now.
I think it's amazing and telling for all of us that cover this sport that every time everybody's asked that question, there's a tone when we're all like, yeah, like it just feels weird. It just feels weird to admit this is where Indiana is. Dan, real quick before we let you go, today, right now, where we stand in the college football season, if you had to bet everything in Caroline's bank account, because not betting mine or yours, everything in Caroline's bank account. It's not that much in there. Then we got to face you every week and say, sorry, we lost all your money. Who's the one team you would bet on to win the Natty?
Yeah, I think it's Ohio State, really. I mean, they are just so solid. And the way their defense is playing right now, Matt Patricia coming in as their defensive coordinator, taking over for Jim Knowles, they haven't missed a beat. I think a lot of that, frankly, is Caleb Downs and just how much he makes everybody else better on that defense. They're just so hard to score against, and I think they're getting better offensively. They've got some of the best weapons out there, especially Jeremiah Smith. Julian Sayin is improving. I think by the end of the season, he's going to be really, really good. He's good now. But I think Ohio State's the most bankable team right now in the country.
Well, if Caroline's wedding is far smaller, then you'll know that you were wrong. All right, that's the pressure that Dan has just put on. Dan, we appreciate your time as always, my friend. Thanks for hanging out with us.
All right, see you next time.
Dan Wolken doing great work. All right, coming up, Luka doing big work last night. Can Luka carry the Lakers? That's the real question with LeBron out. We'll answer it next.
Hey Jason and Caroline, it's Dan Titus, and here's what happened in the association while you were sleeping. Luka Doncic made his much anticipated preseason debut, and let me tell you, he wasted no time getting busy. Putting defenders in the blender, hitting ridiculous step back threes. I mean, he looked like he was in midseason form, making rookies look silly out there, pacing the Lakers with 22 first half points. His night was done pretty much early in the third quarter. He finished with 25 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists in just 22 minutes. And Austin Reeves joined the party, dropping 25 points of his own. Now on to Birmingham, where things got a little bit spicy between the New Orleans Pelicans and the Houston Rockets. Jose Alvarado and Amen Thompson got tangled up in the second quarter, and you know whenever there's a brawl to be had, Amen Thompson wants that smoke. He threw a right hook that didn't quite connect, and fortunately it didn't because he was only assessed a technical foul along with Jose Alvarado. Both teams had to separate the two. In post-game, it was all love though. They dapped it up, kept it classy, and the Rockets ended up edging out the Pelicans 130 to 128. Jabari Smith Jr. led the way for the Rockets with 26 points, followed by Amen Thompson with 21 points, 5 boards, and 3 assists. But the dunk of the night goes to none other than Zion Williamson, who brought out his signature 360 windmill. And man, it just looks different when Zion's healthy and in shape. So really excited to see what he can bring for the Pelicans this season. So there you have it, all eyes on the mini brawl in Birmingham and Luka Doncic's preseason debut. So quick question for you guys before I get out of here. Do you think Luka Doncic can carry the Lakers with LeBron James out for upwards of a month?
Well, Dan Titus doing God's work, helping us so that we can get some
Let's
sleep and get
go.
us the West Coast update. Great job. We get a round of applause from the entire show, Dan. Well done by you. And Dan's going to be our
West Coast warrior.
late night help. You know, I love that. And look, he asked a great question. Can Luka carry the Lakers in LeBron's absence?
Yeah.
You know, Dan just told you about it. If you've seen the highlights out there, Luka last night was just some of the step back stuff was just wild and incredible. And it raises this question because this guy is sciatica. We're going to be without LeBron for a bit. Caroline, are you confident that Luka can carry the weight while LeBron is out?
Well, based off of what we've seen, one, yes. I mean, skinny Luka, it's early, but we're getting return on the skinny Luka investment. And secondly, isn't that what Luka was brought in to do? That the Lakers understood that the future for LeBron James is probably pretty short. They needed to bring in a new future of the organization, a new star, a new, focal point of the organization. That's why the Lakers traded for Luka Doncic, was to take the baton from LeBron James whenever he decides to eventually hang it up, which is sooner rather than later, and also to hold down the fort until LeBron James comes back. Now, it is early. I do have to question, how much do these games really matter in the grand scheme of things? But I do understand how competitive and how deep the West is, that when we're having these conversations, in March, April, and May, we're going to be talking about some of these games in October and November, that if the margin for error is so slim, then yes, these games do matter. But I think overall, yes, Luka can. That's what Luka is being paid in Los Angeles to do, is to hold down the fort in LeBron James's absence.
Yeah, and I think we have to acknowledge who the one is here. I saw a graphic yesterday of the best twos in the league, the best secondary stars in the league, and it had LeBron at number one on this. Is he really carrying the weight, or is he just doing his job? This is Luka's team at this point. This is what the Lakers intended to do. This is the passing of the torch that Lakers fans and the Lakers organization should want. His job is to keep them competitive and in the title conversation, which is the goal for the Lakers. Look, it's not lost on me that I still think that Oklahoma City and much of the West is deeper and better than the Lakers as currently constructed. But if the goal is championships, the question is, can Luka keep them in range and striking distance of a championship? And I think the answer to that is yes. But that being said,
that's not new for Luka.
No, that's true too.
He's been the focal point of an organization. He's carried an organization to the NBA Finals before. This isn't like the Lakers are asking a 2 or a 3 to all of a sudden be a 1. The Lakers just have the privilege of having two guys that can, on any given night, be A1, that can carry 18. This isn't uncharted territory for Luka. The Lakers aren't asking Luka to play outside of his ability.
Yeah, I think it's such a tone shift. We just have to accept. The question is not really can Luka carry the Lakers. It's, can LeBron give the Lakers an extra push when he comes back? I think this is so squarely Luka's team. But that raises these questions, because right now in most sportsbook Luka is actually your MVP favorite, which I sort of laugh at because the last time I checked, I'm also looking at Wemby over here. And look, right now, you see it there at BetMGM. Wemby, slightly longer odds, 12-1 right there for Wemby. In my mind, if I'm looking around this, and right now I got to be asked who I think the favorite for MVP is in the NBA, it is Wemby. I mean, you start talking about when Windhorst said that he might be 7'7". So you're talking about somebody that is 7'7", that has the range to force you to actually step outside and guard him. You can't block. He's going to be able to do whatever he wants, and he's going to be the focal point of the Spurs from day one. I just think the momentum that's coming in, you talk about somebody that just is going to be unstoppable all year long. This extra size, I can't believe he's put that on. Now, for Wemby, is such a key to what I think makes him great. And think about who wins MVPs, Caroline. Like
Look
when
at that.
Giannis was, I mean, 100%. When he's not even jumping. His feet are on the ground. Good. When Giannis won the MVP, Giannis was absolutely uncoverable, right? Like there was nothing you could do to stop him. We watched year in and year out, Jokic. Nobody can stop him. You win an MVP. When you are unstoppable and nobody can figure out how to slow down your game, you're an MVP. That's what I think Wemby's going to be all year.
And if I can get Wemby league MVP at plus 1,200 odds, like I'm willing to put some cash on that. Like, look at that. That's what a toddler looks like next to me. And we are talking about a professional athlete, professional basketball player next to Wemby. Like 7'7" is hard for me to even like conceptualize. It's hard for me to even like grasp that in my mind, that a human being can be that tall. That's over 2 feet taller than I am. That's insane. Absolutely insane. So yes, I would absolutely say, just in terms of value, worth sprinkling a few shekels on that. But I will tolerate 0 SGA erasure Fitz. Like, following the season that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had last year, like, why are we all of a sudden just writing him off? Is it the fact that he's not an overly sexy superstar? Is it the fact that he plays in Oklahoma City? Like, I don't know what it is that we overall as a sports society are just kind of writing SGA off as like, oh, that was a cute story. Like, on to the next one, on to Wemby, on to Giannis. And that's no disrespect to Wemby, and that's no disrespect to Giannis, but I feel like we're all just conveniently overlooking the fact that SGA has the best odds to be MVP following up a season that was remarkable. I mean, he, for the most part, carried Oklahoma City to a championship. So that is one. My only question about Wemby is, go ahead. Before we get to Wemby.
Mid-range jumpers are boring. Like you're not wrong that
like
SGA
is that what it is?
But mid-range jump, like just being able to pull up from 8 to 10
Oklahoma
feet
City's
repeatedly
boring.
and just make it.
Pull-up
It's boring.
Mid-range jumpers
boring.
are boring. Like
yeah, like when we run top 10, like how many times this year are we going to run the top 10 plays and see Wemby or see Luka? The answer is a lot. When everybody runs the top 10 plays of the night, it's going to be Wemby and Luka a lot. Hell, the Lakers lost last night, and they're running a step-back three on SportsCenter all day as one of the best plays from Luka, right? Like, it's sexy. Like, he's got hardware. That's cool. Like, that's very cool. It's incredible.
Sexy doesn't win championships.
Sexy doesn't win MVPs. I mean, sexy doesn't win MVPs. I like sexy does win MVPs. You got to be sexy to win the MVP.
Clearly not.
You got to. You really think you think if we end up with a year where Wemby is out here doing things we've never seen before, like it's just we love that sort of how the hell did he do that? That's what Jokic passing is key as anything to why we fell in love with Jokic, because you've just never seen a big guy with handles like that. Like it hits different. Wemby's doing something we've never seen before. SGA's doing mid-range jumpers from the 90s. And it's great. It's great. It's just not sexy.
And look, it doesn't necessarily have to be sexy. It is nothing against Wemby or Giannis or Luka or Jalen Brunson, who should absolutely be in the MVP conversation. I just want SGA to get his due. Nobody's talking about SGA in the same way that we're talking about those other guys. And SGA has the hardware to back it up. So let's not, erase SGA from this conversation or from our memories. The other thing about Wemby, I'm concerned about his ability to stay healthy enough to stay in the MVP conversation. And I know that Wemby does everything, has every tool in his arsenal to take care of his body, that he has invested into his body, that he's invested into trainers, into nutritionists, and, holistic wellness to make sure that he can stay healthy. Because at 7'7", I mean, sometimes you just have to pull out every single stop that you possibly can to stay healthy. But that does concern me that if, I'm taking a value pick on Wemby at plus 1,200 to be MVP, how reliable is he to stay healthy for the better part of a season? I don't know that, just because we haven't seen someone at his size, his stature, and the amount that he's going to be asked to do for this Spurs team.
Remembering that with all the rule changes because of load management, you do have to play 65 games to be eligible for these awards. You make a very good point. Like, Wemby's going to have to be on the court. I think SGA and the fact that it's not sexy, combined with Luka and the fact that LeBron's going to take some of that shine if the Lakers are good enough to put him in the conversation, you can sort of but so many of the guys along the way. I think Wemby's going to be there when it's all said and done, and my bank account will thank me repeatedly if that actually happens. All right, we've got plenty to come in hour number 2, including, is the sky falling for some of the most prominent brands in the NFL? We'll break it down next. Look at that. You've made it halfway through the Hump Day edition of Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Mason. She's Caroline. Apparently, I just combined our names. I got so excited about the Hump Day, I just combined us. So I'm.
Doesn't matter what our names are.
And that's what we're
Doesn't
doing.
matter.
Right?
Just get past it. Yeah, that's what we have lower thirds for.
She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. The sky is already falling for me, but here's what we're going to do as we start hour number 2. We're going to take a look at some teams who are underperforming so far based on their preseason expectations. We're a third of the way through the NFL season. But most importantly, we're not just going to look at the underperformers. We're going to take a look at them and decide, is the sky falling? Is it time for everything just to go? Is the sky falling? So, Caroline
Fenton. The sky is falling! The sky is falling!
Oh, that's amazing. Can we get that one more time? I just want to hear that. That's
the sky is falling. The sky is falling.
No, that's so
good. That's
live
from New York. All Jets fans can be heard saying that.
That is fact. Good Lord. All right, let's start with the Bills. Let's start with the Buffalo Bills because we have been sort of in and out on the Bills. So where are we now? Are the Bills, is the sky falling? The fact that the Bills head into the bye as a second-place team in the AFC East on a 2-game losing streak, is the sky falling, Caroline Fenton?
Yes, it is. The sky is falling in Buffalo, New York. Falling up.
The sky is falling!
Yeah. All over New York, the sky is falling. My goodness. Doesn't matter if you're in Manhattan or Buffalo. The sky is coming down. I mean, obviously, you get your butt whooped by the Atlanta Falcons. That wasn't a weird or fluky loss. The Falcons just straight up whooped you. So, yes, the sky is going to be falling. The sky is falling now But then the Bills are going to do what the Bills do. Josh Allen does what Josh Allen does. They're going to figure it out. They're going to win the division. They're going to host a playoff game. So the sky will be right back up. They're going to push the sky back up. Josh Allen will do it single-handedly. And then the sky will fall again in late January, because that's just what happens with this Bills team. They look like a great team. Then they suffer a few dumb losses. The sky is falling. They figure things out. Woohoo, everything's great in Buffalo land. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And then they're going to lose in the AFC Championship game, and the sky is going to fall yet again.
Yeah,
I've seen this movie before.
Everything you just said just has to absolutely rip out the heart of Bills fans. Like, when I was in country music a long time ago, a buddy of mine said that I'll never forget, there's 2 times in your career that you play the Indiana State Fair, on the way up and on the way down. No offense to Indiana. This is true of all state fairs. On the way up and on the way down. And on the way up, it feels a lot better than it does on the way down, because on the way up, you're like, yeah, everything's great. Wow. On the way down, you're like, man, we were just playing stadiums and now we're playing the Indiana State Fair. That's the Buffalo Bills. Because for a lot of teams finishing with 10 wins, you're going to be like, hey, 10 wins, we're on to something. This is good. Not for Buffalo. No, Buffalo, the expectation is right up there. Like, when you have gotten this close every single year, it feels like the sky is falling anytime that you are not truly a Super Bowl contender. And I'm sorry, I do not believe today, as we sit with what we've seen from the Buffalo Bills this year, that they are going to end up in the Super Bowl. So the sky is falling because the expectation wasn't 10 wins, and they might get there. It wasn't 11 wins, and they might get there. It wasn't the playoffs. They'll probably get there. No, any of all of that. Nope, absolutely. And there is some level to me that the sky is falling because of the expectation in Buffalo. And when the expectation, deservedly so, is as high as it was, yeah, the sky is definitely falling. What about the Philadelphia Eagles? Do you believe the sky is falling for the Philadelphia Eagles?
Yes, the sky is falling. And it's not just back-to-back losses, including one to your divisional rival, who, have probably the most exciting and dynamic and, an absolutely diabolical, insane, and maniacal duo in Jackson Dart and Cam Scadaboo. So it's not just on the field. Like, yes, the on-the-field product the last couple of weeks warrants a sky falling in Philadelphia. It's also off the field. It's the A.J. Brown Twitter of it all. It's the A.J. Brown and what he's been saying to the media of it all. It's the fact that the Eagles offensively have all of the weapons in the world, yet it doesn't feel like they have a good feel or a good vibe or a good identity as far as play calling is concerned. That they're getting away from what they do best. And it looks like the last couple of weeks, they're an identityless football team, which is wild, because I think we all know what the Philadelphia Eagles identity is. They want to play great defense. They want to be rough at the lines of scrimmage. They want to run the football. They want to run the tush push. Like, that is the Eagles. That is their identity, and they're very good at it, but they're coming out of that identity, and you're seeing it show up in the win and loss column. So, yeah, I do think the sky is falling in Philadelphia. Like the Bills, they'll get things figured out. Like, I think the Eagles obviously are a playoff team. I still do think the Eagles win that division. They also will host a playoff game, but for right now, things in Philly, like, the vibes are off. It feels a little icky.
All right, so just because I want to hear the sky is falling thing again, I would tell you that the sky is falling, but
The sky is falling! The sky is falling!
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut him off. It isn't.
What is that
Philadelphia's
from?
going to be just fine. I don't know what that's from. It's epic. I'm sure they'll tell us. It's
It
incredible.
is epic, yeah.
So we'll figure it out. I will say this: the sky is not falling for the Philadelphia Eagles, because we've seen this before. Like, I'm waiting for A.J. Brown to come out in the librarian outfit for next week's for the Halloween games. Come out dressed as a librarian, drinking a book on the sideline, or reading a book on the sideline, just
Drinking a book.
flipping through pages. Yeah, either way.
Book flask.
We've seen the I need that. We've seen the drama. We've seen the AJ's not happy. We've seen the offense is broken. We've seen the passing game needs to be better. We've seen the you can't trust it. We've seen a year and a half ago, Sirianni was on the hot seat and might get fired. And then they turned around and won a Super Bowl. They're going to be just fine. Chaos is just part of how the Philadelphia Eagles are wired. It's like dating a crazy girl. Like, at some point, you just decide, if you're an Eagles fan, you've decided that you love crazy girls. So there's going to be some ups and downs. It's going to be a wild ride. You're never really going to be able to figure it out. You don't know why she's angry all the time. You don't know why things have gotten so chaotic. But at the end of the day, you love her. And that's what the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be. They're going to be a crazy girl that's right back in the Super Bowl conversation. By the way, we have
Which
found
coincidentally
out that
is Eagles fans.
100%. Yeah.
All Eagles fans are crazy.
It's
boo Santa
crazy.
Claus.
It's like a weird, it's the weird couple of crazy. I found out the sky is falling is from Chicken Little. So there we go. Let's see if we can
that
get
makes
some
sense.
Chicken Little here. Is the sky falling for the Washington Commanders?
As much as I love our sky is falling sound effect from Chicken Little, no, I don't think the sky is falling for the Commanders. Obviously, you hate to have a loss like they suffered last 2 nights ago on Monday Night Football, but you can kind of rationalize it and say we made a lot of mistakes. It was rainy, it was gross, it was just a weird game. Like I didn't step away from that game feeling any differently about the Commanders because Jaden Daniels looked like Jaden Daniels. And as long as Jaden Daniels looks like Jaden Daniels, then you can't be overly concerned in Washington. He is the motor that keeps that team running. So no, sky's not falling in Washington.
They are 3-3, and originally I thought I was going to be no, but I like the sound effect so much. Yes, the sky is falling in Washington.
The sky is falling. The sky is falling.
Oh, it's so good. And I'll tell you why. As I think more about it, look, we might agree that the Cowboys aren't a juggernaut, but let's see where the Cowboys end up. They still have 2 games against the Cowboys. They also have the Chiefs, the Seahawks, the Lions, the Broncos, the Vikings, who may be healthy at that point, the Eagles twice on their schedule. The Washington Commanders have a gauntlet in front of them, and they're 3-3. So if the expectation was that Washington was going to take a big step forward and prove that they're an annual playoff caliber football team, I do think the sky's kind of falling. And as great as Jaden Daniels is, I can see a world where we don't get to 10 or 11 wins with this team, and that's going to make Washington fans feel like the sky is falling, even if most of us had a more reasonable expectation. How about, and Jaden Daniels has to do a little bit better holding on to the football. Let's get another one in here.
Take care of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, that's the edict we all say, but it's never that easy. I want to get this one in sensitively because I think their fans are already hurting. Ravens, Baltimore Ravens fans they're on one. The question is the sky falling? 1-5 for Baltimore. Is the sky falling for the Ravens?
Yes. The sky has fallen for the Ravens. 1-5. We were talking about the Ravens winning the Super Bowl this preseason. No, it's not to say that they can't. It's not to say that they can't, get healthy and win a bunch of games because their next stretch on their schedule, there are winnable games on their schedule. Shout out to Hutton, producer Hutton. But yeah, the sky is falling because they're injured and they stink with the injuries, but they stunk before the injuries too. Like, let's not forget, week 1, Lamar was healthy, the defense was healthy, and they still coughed up a double-digit fourth quarter lead to the Buffalo Bills. So you can say, okay, well, just got to get healthy. Lamar will get back out there, and then, okay, the Ravens will look like the Ravens again. They didn't look like the Ravens when they were healthy. So, yes, the sky is falling. This defense just isn't good enough. Holding on to leads late in the game, they're not good enough at it. Sky down on the ground. It's fallen in Baltimore.
We didn't get to hear the fancy Chicken Little on it. Can we hear the fancy Chicken Little?
The sky is falling. The sky is falling.
I'm going to be a beacon of light.
Better.
I'm going to be a beacon of light in a dark, dark world. Or I'm going to be stubborn. It could just be that I'm being stubborn. I'm not willing to say that the sky is falling quite yet. And look, part of this is because...
What more needs to happen, Fitz?
Well, the rest of the AFC kind of sucks, right? Like, I've gotten comfortable with the acknowledgement that 9 wins is going to get you in the playoffs. So they're 1-5. But what does that really mean realistically throughout the rest of the season? That means if they go 8-4 the rest of the way, I still think they have a shot at the playoffs. Or I guess, 8-4 around there. Yeah, that gets them to 9-8. So they've got to get themselves into a situation where they get to 9 wins. Now, without Lamar, that's not going to be easy to do. I acknowledge that. But you mentioned it, and their schedule is at least favorable. Like the Bears, I'm not sure are truly a juggernaut. We'll find out. The Dolphins are falling apart. The Vikings may not have J.J. McCarthy anytime soon. They get the Browns still a couple of times. They get the Steelers a couple of times, who I don't think are great. Like there is still the runway there to make up the ground. So even though they're 1-5, and certainly most 1-5 teams, I'm turning around saying the sky is falling, it's still there for the Ravens. They just have to go on a fairly epic run. I mean, they're plus 150 still to win the AFC North. Plus 150 isn't bad for a 1-5 team to turn around and win their division. Like, that's stunning to me, Caroline.
These matchups with the Steelers upcoming, those are setting up to be absolute epic showdowns. Because that is one thing that I think Ravens fans can keep in their back pocket. They've only played, one divisional game? They have 5 divisional games left on their schedule. You win those and you win the division. Like, the division is still ahead of the Ravens. My confidence in them winning those games, though, is starting to wane. Sure, you get Lamar Jackson back, and Lamar Jackson can be the ultimate deodorant to a whole lot of stink that is that defense. But you're gonna end up being the Cowboys. That maybe Lamar can put up 35 points a game, but if your defense can't stop a nosebleed, then what does that do for you?
You are right. And I think that's the hardest part of the logic on the Ravens, is that the runway is still there. And I believe in Lamar and I believe in Harbaugh, but at some point, past performance does not indicate future results. And you make a very, very good point. Like, the question isn't, is the runway there? The question is, can the Ravens take advantage of that runway? I'm not sure. Let's get one more in. The Texans, the Houston Texans, who, by the way, had big expectations coming into the year for a lot of people to win their division. Right now, they're back on track. They started the season 0-3. Are we saying that the sky is falling in Houston?
Yeah, I think. I think, and I think it's because the ick of starting the season 0-3 still kind of lingers. And Fitz, I don't know why they're struggling so bad. I don't know why they struggled so badly to start the season. There's too much talent on this Texans team to be in the position where they are. And I think a big reason why the sky is falling for me, for the Texans, yes, you rip off back-to-back wins, but that's over the crummy, crappy Titans who just fired their coach, and a Ravens team who we just said, yes, the sky absolutely is falling. How sustainable is that level of winning? There's too much talent on this team to be as bad as they are. You have CJ Stroud, and then defensively, like, the Texans have so much talent defensively. Derek Stingley and Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. Yet the defense isn't dominating teams like I thought they would, or they should, at least on paper. Then you look at the division. The Colts, they're looking like a top 5 team in the league. The Jags continue to pick up big quality wins. The Jags are not an easy out. The Jags are a tricky football team. Any team that plays defense to the level of that and can turn you over at the rate that the Jags have been turning teams over. Right now, the Texans are the 3rd best team in their division, and I don't see a very clear path to them, getting a wild card spot. They go to Seattle this upcoming weekend. They have the Broncos on their schedule. They have the Bills on their schedule. Obviously, they have 2 matchups with the Colts. They go to the Chiefs. They go to the Chargers. There's not a lot of easy dubs that you can put in pen here, Fitzy.
That's why I think the sky is falling for the Texans.
The sky is falling! The sky is falling!
Never get tired of it. Look at that right there in front of your screen. Will Anderson Jr. should be a top contender for Defensive Player of the Year. You've got a guy on the defensive line that's playing at Defensive Player of the Year caliber, and you're supposed to have one of the guys at quarterback that can absolutely elevate a franchise. And I think we have to look at how bad it was for the Texans and the expectation of how good it was going to get once they figured out that draft class with CJ Stroud and with Will Anderson Jr. was so incredible for them, right? It changed the calibration of where we thought the franchise would be. So the expectation was they are about to take that leap to competing with the best of the best in the AFC. So part of the reason the sky is falling is because a couple of years ago we decided that this team was about to take a meteoric leap, and instead they're running in place. And look, the Texans are not bad this year. They've won a couple of games in a row. You're right. And they still have plenty of time to salvage their season. What nobody anticipated is that the Jags are very good and the Colts are very good. And now the Texans are fighting and scratching and clawing from behind. Now, like I said, I think 9 wins gets you in the playoffs. So maybe they have a shot at the playoffs. But part of the reason that the sky is falling is because playoffs was just a small part of the expectations for the Texans over the last couple of years. We were supposed to feel differently about this team. And I'm not sure, Caroline, that we do. So, yeah, I'll say that the sky is falling on the Texans simply because I think the Texans should be far better than where they are. You're right. They're way too talented to be stuck in the middle. Okay, we figured out who the sky is falling for. We figured out who doesn't need to panic quite yet. We'll see who's right and wrong over the course of the next few weeks. But in the meantime, let's get to some college football news and notes out there. Penn State, big name hunting? We'll tell you about it next. New Penn State AD Pat Kraft plans to take a couple of big swings during the hiring process. One name that he may make a run at is Notre Dame's Marcus Freeman. That's according to On3 Sports. And so Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports Daily, we've seen a lot of this, and there's a lot of conversation about big game hunting. Now, I get it, Caroline. I get it that at some point, if you're Penn State, you certainly don't want to come out and not go after big names. That's a terrible look. You're gonna make some phone calls, but do you really believe that they have to go after a big?
Yeah, I do, because I don't think that you move on from James Franklin less than a year removed from being in the Big Ten title game and a Final Four appearance just to hire No Name McGee. I think they do have to take some of these big swings. They have to pick up the phone and call the Marcus Freemans, the Lane Kiffins of the world. That's not to say that you are guaranteed to get a big name. And that's the risk that you run when you fire a coach like James Franklin midway through the season. But you have to take these big swings. You have to prove to your fan base that, going, 9-3 with losses to Northwestern isn't good enough. I also think a reason why you go after the big name is because big names are sexy and they're appealing to rich people. And rich people invest into football programs that they feel confident in. Money has never been more important in college football than it is right now. If you go out and you hire No Name McGee, Joe Schmo off the streets, and I'm a kajillionaire Penn State fan, I'm not really going to buy into that because I don't see your vision. I'm not intrigued by No Name McGee. I'm intrigued by Kurt Signetti. Like, I'm intrigued by Matt Campbell, by Lane Kiffin, by Marcus Freeman, by, insert big name coach here, Brian Kelly, like, nudge, nudge. So, yeah, I do think they have to go after a big name because I think they have to attract big time, big money boosters to buy into this program. Money matters in college football.
So I hear you, and I'll keep this board up for 1 second, because one thing that I would say is that while many of these names, if you cover college football, are big names, I think there's a difference between Eli Drinkwitz, for example, who I think is a very, very good head coach at Missouri. I think there's a difference in name recognition even for we landed Eli Drinkwitz from Missouri versus Brian Kelly, Marcus Freeman. There are certain names that I think when we say big game hunting, I think most of the names on this list that we've got here in front of us are moderate game hunting. They're big names, college football fans. But when I think big name, I think immediately. So you're going for one of those household Q rating, like everybody knows Marcus Freeman at this point.
Like Kalen DeBoer.
Knows Brian Kelly. Right. Like you're going for the biggest of the big. And I would say this to Penn State. Right now, the only thing that should matter, and this is living in a utopian society, go get the best coach. I don't care who the best coach is. I don't care where the best coach comes from. I don't care if you've identified somebody that's at University of Wisconsin Whitewater and you believe he can change a program. If you are going to simply fire every coach that doesn't win a national championship, the only thing that you should worry about is finding a coach that you believe in your heart of hearts isn't just a salesman, isn't just a billboard, can actually win you a national championship. If we're going to go on the construct that James Franklin was a failure at Penn State, as such a failure that he got fired, then you look at the body of work of James Franklin. So now you get the understanding of what the expectation is. What Penn State tells you by firing James Franklin is that winning a lot of football games but not winning a national championship isn't enough. And that's fine if that's where you choose to be as a program. But now you have to understand that when you go hunting, if you simply go get somebody that you think is a big name, you better be damn sure that person can win more games than James Franklin. You got to be sure that that person can win more championships than James Franklin. That's a tough edict to follow. That's a hard line to try and find. I don't know that anybody can identify that. So to me, you just got to identify the best coach, and you got to trust that your AD, your school, is going to back the most important thing, which isn't the billboard, it's the number of games you win.
You brought up something there that I think is the important thing when you said find someone who can change your program. I don't think Penn State needs to find someone that can change their program, because Penn State's program doesn't need rehabilitation. I think that's what you have to identify whenever you're looking for a coach is where are we right now? Are we in a position to win right now? Do we need someone to come in and kind of clean things up a little bit? Do we need someone that's a big splashy name? We don't even care if they don't win a whole lot of games. We just need somebody to, reinvigorate this fan base and get some excitement in here. You have to identify where your football program is at and what you need. Right now, Penn State as a roster is in a position to win football games. They have enough talent on their roster. There's enough respect in that building. The culture, at least from the outside looking in, maybe there's somebody with much more insight into this program that feels differently. From on the outside looking in, there is a very strong foundation of culture in this football program. They need someone to come in and win them football games and someone to continue to build upon the foundation that James Franklin built. That's what they need to find. And if you think the
but he's got to win more games than Franklin
from Blue Valley State, yes, he has to win more games than Franklin. So who makes you feel confident in winning more games than James Franklin, who went 9-3 and 10-2 almost every single year? The tight end coach from Blue Valley State University, or a proven big name head coach in college football? Now, I think about, too, whenever LSU was looking to hire Brian Kelly, what LSU needed was somebody to come in and clean up a whole lot of stink that was happening in that football program. Brian Kelly was a proven culture builder, foundation builder, somebody who ran their football program where all of the T's were crossed and I's were dotted. That's what LSU needed. Penn State doesn't need that. Penn State doesn't need someone to clear out all of the cobwebs in the closet. Penn State needs someone to come in and win right now. I don't think a young, up-and-coming, hot, sexy name behind, that's being talked about a lot behind closed doors is that kind of person. It's somebody that has been there, done that, is a proven winner in college football, and that is going to be a big name.
Yeah, but the hardest part about that is if the line in the sand is they must win national championships, if that's the only line that matters, well, you can cross Marcus Freeman off the list. How many natties has he won at Notre Dame? I mean, how many coaches right now, like if the line in the sand is I will only bring in a coach that I know can win more than James Franklin, what you're telling me is that I will only bring in a coach that will win a national championship. So basically, you're either rolling a Brinks truck up to Ryan Day or Kirby Smart. Like, I mean, who the hell else are you hiring that actually that actually fills your overall, like, I mean, let's be real. Marcus Freeman isn't that guy. Like, even the other names that we mentioned, like Lane Kiffin. Lane doesn't have a national championship. Lane doesn't have that moment of saying, okay, I can go out and beat absolutely anybody. Like, how many guys actually have the resume that Penn State's looking for? And even if they do have the resume that Penn State's looking for, can Penn State pay them so much more than where they already are that it makes moving your family to Happy Valley worth it to go win for Penn State when you're already in a situation where you're probably, if you're that guy, a national championship contender?
Well, okay, if you only want to hire a national championship winning head coach, there's three active head coaches in college football that can do that for you. It's Dabo, it's Ryan Day, it's Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart's not going anywhere. He will be at Georgia until the day that he dies. Ryan Day is not going anywhere. Why would he go from Ohio State to Penn State? The only one I think would be Dabo, maybe just for just a change of environment and a change of pace. But also, anybody feel confident that Dabo can continue to win in college football? Sure, he's won national championships, but I don't really feel confident that Dabo can adapt and survive in this era of college football. So everything that fits those parameters is really off the table. So now you go to that secondary tier. Coaches that have elevated programs that they are currently at and have maybe reached the ceiling of where they're at, or coaches that have been knocking on the door and got further than James Franklin ever did. Sure, Marcus Freeman's never won a national championship, but he got them there. He got Notre Dame there. And who did he have to beat in order to get there in the process? James Franklin and Penn State. So Marcus Freeman's already done more than James Franklin did. Who fits that other kind of parameter? Well, Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin elevated Ole Miss to be a national title contender. It was not that long ago that Ole Miss was just kind of a middling team in the SEC. Lane Kiffin has now gotten Ole Miss to being a top 5 team in all of college football. It's fair to ask, how much further can Ole Miss get? Is there a ceiling at Ole Miss that Lane Kiffin has hit. Maybe not. In today's era of college football, look, everything's off the table. Forget everything that you know about, histories of programs and reputations of programs. Maybe there is no ceiling. Just tell Kurt Cignetti at Indiana what we thought the ceiling was at Indiana. Now Indiana's a national title contender, but it's fair to ask, what more can Lane Kiffin do at a program with more tradition, more history, and, maybe even more investment? I think that's probably the tier that Penn State is looking at. The Marcus Freemans, the Lane Kiffins of the world that have proven it, but just haven't gotten to the mountaintop.
And the Marcus Freemans and Lane Kiffins currently, according to at least public record, both make more money than James Franklin was making. So they're going to have to pay more money, so much more, that they're both willing to leave their situations. We'll get some thoughts on this and everything else in the college football landscape next. T-Bob Hebert joining us. We'll break it down with him. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. Lost amongst all the hand-wringing over the struggling LSU offense is the remarkable defensive turnaround in the Jaden Daniels Heisman year. They were literally 131st in stop rate halfway through the season. Now LSU is 4th in the nation. That from T-Bob Hebert, who joins us right now. And I don't know, I feel like I'm in the way on this one because T-Bob, Caroline Fenton, I got two LSU absolute experts hanging out with me. We appreciate your time. Thanks for hanging out with us. Look, I'll let you guys dork out on LSU. I just got to ask a question. T-Bob, you are the perfect person to ask this. Between Coach O and then Brian Kelly, do you have to have a weird or fake accent to eventually become the LSU head coach? Is that a requirement?
No, it is not a requirement. Now, Coach O's accent was obviously born of sincerity, being from Cutoff, Louisiana, a Trojan man to his roots. And look, I get it. I'm a bit of a audio chameleon. If you want to fit in with the new crew, BK, let a little family go. Those are on the laundry list of problems that LSU fans may have with Brian Kelly right now. I would say the family is near the bottom.
Yeah, it is crazy that LSU is 5-1, but it feels like they're 1-4. Those are the vibes. But let me ask you, T, because there's so many names being thrown around for the opening at Penn State. I've heard Marcus Freeman, I've heard Lincoln Riley, I've heard Kurt Cignetti, I've also heard Brian Kelly. Now, LSU fans have some issues with BK, but let's say Penn State does poach Brian Kelly. How would you feel?
I think so. Okay, this is and sorry guys, I gotta lean up real quick. I know my camera's gonna do some wonky stuff. I just got hit with the low battery. Okay, we're at 10. Okay, I'm gonna make sure my battery's okay. So this is a complicated answer. Um, when LSU lost to Ole Miss, as college football fans are wont to do, anytime there's a painful big loss, there's immediately talk of firing the coach, right, and wanting to move on.
Mhm.
I was of the opinion that I don't know that I agreed and for a few reasons. The first of which is purely economic. Like credit to Penn State, apparently Adidas may have stepped in some form or fashion. You know, there's varying reports there and helped them pay that $50 million to James Franklin. But LSU, Louisiana in general, is not a particularly rich state. LSU does not have a particularly wealthy alumni base, maybe in comparison with some of the other schools in the country. And so the idea of paying someone, I think for Kelly now, it'd either be 60 or 50 million. It's the remainder of his contract. The idea of paying that amount of money to a guy not to work in the NIL era seems insane because it comes with the opportunity cost of every single dollar that you spend for somebody not to work is a dollar that could have been spent on acquiring talent. Like that's two elite rosters. You can even stretch that to 3 elite rosters. So I thought the Kelly conversation was a complete non-starter. Unfortunately, or maybe not, but like in talking to LSU fans since, it kind of seems like the majority opinion is that they are kind of done with BK a little bit, and that maybe my hesitance to do so was in the minority. I think also, though, it's not just like, look, I think the national media might have a bit of a weird view on LSU, and it's in that, yes, there's 3 national championships since the year 2000, and yes, they feel like a contender potentially every single year, but if you actually look at the results, 10-win seasons and above are the exception, not the rule. They just happen to have this certain je ne sais quoi where you know, every now and then a warlord arises and unites the clans and you run over the rest of the country before you fall back into infighting and drama. So I guess what I'm getting at is Kelly may not have reached the ceiling back to me to yet, but he does bring a competence that has an objectively very high floor. And there's something to be said for that, a little consistency and stability in this very tumultuous age of college football that we currently live in. So I think the answer is complicated, but I think the idea of him being hired away certainly makes it more interesting because you basically take the economic factor out of it. And if you were to ask, I think if you were to poll LSU fans today, if they would want Penn State to hire Brian Kelly, even though you could definitely claim that it's nonsensical and it comes with entirely too much risk, I think a lot of LSU fans would probably go ahead and hire him. And then they're also suffering from the disconnect of, you know, in 2023, you had a national championship offense with the worst defense in the entire country. And this year, it looks like you have a potential championship caliber defense with an offense that is just deeply, deeply flawed. And quite frankly, I don't know that I see too many solutions on the horizon.
It's just, as you talk, though, let's be honest about the college football landscape, right? Like Penn State wanted to get rid of James Franklin. You're talking about LSU not really loving their head coach. It was a year ago that Ohio State fans were like, if Ryan Day doesn't win this year, he's done. They're still Ohio State fans. They're saying, can't beat Michigan, get the bum out of here. Like, how many schools are actually happy with their head coach? It just feels like this is such a weird problem for the entire sport to have that we're just going to end up with this revolving cast of coaches and fan bases that are always pissed off.
Yeah, I mean, again, and this is where we get to the emotional nature of and I've done this job for so long, and it's so right. Coach loses a couple games, and it's like, you know, this guy's been on the golf course all summer long. And this guy's running around, you know, he's talking to girls, like, what's going on here? And then let's say you beat an Alabama, and I freaking love this guy, dude. All of a sudden, all the group texts shut down, the message boards chill out. But honestly, this is what college football coaches should want. It's what we all want in life, right? We want a meritocracy. We want to be judged based on what we accomplish and nothing else. And that's what's great about sports. It's one of the few true meritocracies that we have left, in that if you win, you control how we talk about you. If you lose, you do not. Now, I think as an administrator or an executive in this sport, you have to be wary of that. You have to be you kind of have to guard against some of the emotions of the fan base and recognize that, hey, maybe we don't need, because like these head coaching changes come with so much risk. They're 3 to 4 year decisions that the price can get, in the range of $50 to $100 million. And if you don't get it right, you're going to set yourself back half a decade. And so to me, I think I kind of err on the side of caution a bit. Like I understand why Penn State better get this next hire, right? And I heard you talk in the segment before about just hire the best guy. Well, who's the best guy? Right? That's what everybody loves to say. Like if somebody's arguing against like affirmative action or something, hire the best candidate. Well, okay, we draft first round quarterbacks that fail all the time. We hire can't miss coaches that fail all the time. Like you know whether guys succeed or not. It's impossible. And people pour millions of dollars into trying to figure it out. So it's yeah, I don't think that you want to be too reactive when it comes to these decisions. Now, that said, I don't think Penn State was, right? I think this is a long time coming. I think there's a lot of elements in play. I think buyouts are the real evil here. Like buyouts are the real problem. Jimmy Sexton, the shadow lord of college football, has finagled a system where they just have so much leverage over these schools that these guys get contracts assist anywhere else in the real world. It's insanity.
Yeah, I mean, the best job in America is a fired head football coach. Like
But
James
the cruel
Franklin.
irony is, sorry, Caroline, you know what the cruel irony is, though?
No.
Is that the thing that leads you to be great enough to get that buyout is the same reason why you can't be a normal person and just enjoy the buyout. For the most part.
100%.
Coach O may be
Unless
the
you're Coach
exception.
O.
But like, I mean, if you give me $50 million, you ain't ever going to see me again. Or if you do, it'll just be like doing a podcast for fun because I can. I guess Jimbo's kind of treated pretty normally as well, right? I think he's just kind of chilling out on the ranch, enjoying his 70 mil. But like for the most part, these guys, like Franklin wants to jump back in. Dabo was threatening Clemson with jumping back in. So yeah, it's like they have that money and then they can't even enjoy it.
Yeah, that is true. They're wired just a little bit differently. But I want to look at just kind of the SEC as a whole, because we have two undefeated teams in the SEC, both in the top 5, that both have a tradition of pants pooping. Ole Miss and Texas A&M, both 6-0, both in the top 5. How reliable are these two teams? Like, how sustainable is this level of winning for these two teams, or are they just going to fall back into their tradition of pooping their pants?
I think Ole Miss appears maybe a little bit more overrated than A&M does right now. I've kind of given myself over to this A&M team. I think they are elite on both lines of scrimmage. I think Marcel
we do this
Reed,
every year, T.
No, I know. Well,
to be fair, every year with A&M.
To be fair, I feel like the last few years I've just continued to make the 8-4 jokes that it's going to fail, and maybe I'll be first in line to point and laugh. But there's a few different elements here. I believe in. So the Mike Elko hire from the beginning was a bit outside of what A&M's done recently. It was kind of a blue collar hire for a culture that needed a little blue collar toughness. Then they go and hire what I believe to be the best strength coach in the entire country. I'm biased. He's my favorite coach I've ever had. And that is former LSU strength coach Tommy Moffitt. I know that dude's going to get a team to be tough, and you're starting to see it on the field. So they have the talent they always have. They just haven't followed through. Now I think they have a head coach that is better at instilling a little more toughness in this team, maybe taking advantage of that talent. They have a strength coach that's definitely going to do that. They're great on both lines of scrimmage. Marcel Reed's a very exciting athletic quarterback that can throw enough and gets to throw to Craver and Concepcion, who are two of the best receivers in the entire country. The defensive line is one of the elite pass rushers in the entire nation. So I'm measuring what appears to be objectively on paper a complete team that should be great against the burden of their past, right? And so I've kind of given myself over to believing that this team will indeed actually end up above that 8-4, won't crap their pants, and will end up being a college football championship threat. But this is where it starts. It's this end of October through November. This is when these things are really decided, when you figure out the real mettle of a team, the mettle of a man. And we're going to figure out with Texas A&M.
Are you ready to buy in on Bama as they stand now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've really had to. So I hate Alabama in my soul, deep to my core. And so I've had to really force myself to take a step back and say, okay, I want to objectively look at this team and how would I talk if I didn't have emotional trauma from at there. And I would love Ty Simpson. I'd be celebrating him. In a day and age when guys are always going and leaving when they don't immediately win the job and chasing other things, here's a man who has overcome years of adversity, losing out on multiple battles to now arrive at where he is at. I would love the Caden Proctor pack where they're lining up and throwing him screens or putting him in the gun and having him do wildcat quarterback runs on the goal line. Like, that's all awesome. That's all fun. I would love Caleb Moore's decision making, going for it on 4th and 8, being up 3, 4th and goal, and going for it on 4th and 3, getting the touchdown. Like, these are all elements and traits in a team that I would celebrate were it not Alabama. So I really like this Alabama team. I think you're allowed to get better. This is not the team that lost week 1 to Florida State. I do not ding them too hard for that. And the reason, because my big logic of the was Ty Simpson couldn't beat out Jalen Milroe, but now you're expecting me to believe he's going to be better than Jalen Milroe? Well, I guess he kind of is. Now, he doesn't have the maybe the peak moments of a Jalen Milroe, but what defines this Alabama offense, and this is probably also an extension of Ryan Grubb coming in for OC, is they're so consistent. They're always on schedule. Ty Simpson, that's why he's so highly rated right now, why he's the best passer rating in the SEC. It's maybe not as flashy or big play it has been in the past, but I need to look this up. I keep meaning to forget to. I want to look at Alabama's average distance to go on 3rd down, because it feels like they are consistently putting themselves in good positions on 3rd down because of his efficiency, of being on schedule, and it's translating to wins. And the other part about this, and I meant to get into this last answer as well, is we are going through a time in college football where we are suffering cognitive dissonance between how we have always thought about this sport and how it exists today, in that everybody is closer. Everybody's closer to one another. The top has come down, the middle has risen. And we actually have some quantifiable numbers here. Bill Connolly, he has the S&P Plus ratings. He looked at week 8 of 2019 and week 8 of this year, and teams 1 through 8 are about 25 points worse than they were in 2019, while teams 9 through 25 are 30 points better than they were in 2019. So we got to adjust our brains, because the thing that I hate most about I've seen a lot of recently is every team's bad. This team loses a game, they're bad. No, everybody's just good now. And we have to accept that, especially in the SEC this season, we exist in a more NFL-like structure where it's way more any given Saturday than it's ever been at any time previously in our lives.
T-Bob, man, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your insight. Check him out on Barstool, obviously, and everywhere. We appreciate you hanging out with us, brother. Have a good morning.
Hell yes. Great to hang out, guys. Sorry, I know I can be very wordy. Caroline, it's great to see. Go Tigers. Also, watch Wake Up Barstool, guys, 7 to 9 a.m. Central, FS1. This is our beautiful Wake Up Studios here. And all right, guys, thank you so much.
Congrats on
the
success.
Thanks,
man. We
T.
appreciate you. All right,
Later,
coming
guys.
up next, the WNBA CBA deadline is approaching. Who needs to get involved and what's it actually mean? We'll tell you about it next. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. Check this out. Future makers in sports. Caroline, part of this panel. Ice, a friend of the show, Ice Young, also part of it. What are you up to?
Yes, absolutely. So today at 3:00 Eastern time, tune in to a LinkedIn Live event. Makers is a gender equity brand rooted in storytelling, powered by Yahoo, that creates engaging and accessible spaces to fuel transformation. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing this afternoon. We're talking about future leaders in sports, and we'll have several former female athletes, including our girl, Ice Young, one of my co-hosts on Hoops 360, including Adrian Bueno and Kayla Jeter, both former athletes that have used their perspective and their expertise of playing sports to then transform the next group and generation of athletes. So we'll talk about, some opportunities and paths for athletes and how they kind of hang up the skates and the cleats and the swimsuits and how they transition into this next era of life, and kind of, how that takes a toll on them mentally and physically, and just future opportunities for the future leaders in sports of tomorrow. So tune in. It's going to be a really awesome discussion. Very excited for it and very honored to be part of it.
You are a rock star. You've always been a rock star, and I'm excited to watch today. More rock stars talk about it. It's awesome. All right, so let's get into a little bit of the drama that we've got right now off the court with the WNBA happening. For anyone that hasn't been paying attention, the collective bargaining agreement ends on October 31st. Halloween is a scary day for the W. One of the things that needs to be collectively bargained, I should say, for the WNBA is the new Supermax. So Front Office Sports gave us a little bit of a clue behind the curtain of what that could look like, saying a new CBA proposal from the WNBA includes a Supermax salary closer to $850K, sources tell FOS. The vet minimum would more than triple, hovering around $300,000. Caroline, what do you think? Is that enough?
Well, I mean, on paper, if you just look at the numbers, it's like, okay, great. It's a massive increase. Woohoo, win for everybody. But that's not what the WNBPA is fighting for. Because if you look at the new TV revenue that is coming in, well, the percentage of the share that the Supermax would be, that these contracts would be, is the exact same that it is right now, which is pennies on the dollar of what the NBA counterparts are making in terms of share. WNBA players understand that the amount of money that is invested into the W is massively different than the NBA. They're not asking to be made the dollar amount of what NBA players are making. What they're asking for is the portion, the share, the revenue share that the NBA players are making relative to their television contracts. So what the WNBA is asking for is around a Supermax that is 35% of the salary cap. That is what it is in the NBA. What the WNBA is also asking for is for a more fluid number. The WNBA is now locked into numbers, to actual caps versus be a percentage ebbing and flowing with the television contracts. The WNBA doesn't want to be locked into a specific number. They want to be locked into a percentage. So therefore, if the television revenue and revenue for the league goes up significantly before the next CBA is up, well, then that percentage will go up relative to what the league is bringing in. That's all they're asking for, not a specific dollar amount, but a percentage share that is more reflective of every other professional league in sports versus just the measly pennies on the dollar that they're making now.
And this is where I've seen so many people talk about the prior losses of the WNBA, to which I say I don't really care. I think one thing we have to understand is that athlete contracts, you're not paid for what you have done. You're supposed to be paid for what they expect you to do. The fact that the league may or may not have lost money for a very long time isn't really the problem of the current generation of players. What the current generation of players need to look out for is what's the league doing today? And frankly, all of those losses that NBA owners claim that they took on WNBA clubs, well, a couple of things. One, open your books, show everybody exactly where those losses came from, how those losses came. If you're not willing to open your books, then stop using the books as an excuse. But even above and beyond that, when you open your books, show everybody what portions of those losses you use to help yourself financially with your other businesses. I think these are all parts of the caveat of billionaires doing business. Billionaires have businesses all over the place that lose money. At some point, you have to look at where this business is today, this business, the WNBA, and ask yourself, okay, how are we moving forward? And that's what the league is trying to do by using their prior issues. They're trying to hold back what's happening for the future. This current generation of players does not, should not, and will not give a damn about any of that. I think that's part of what has to be acknowledged, Caroline, because we keep hearing the conversation of, well, that people are just going to get out of the W business. I will remind the world that Mark Davis bought the Las Vegas Aces a few years ago for a few $1 million. That team is now worth $310 million. So whatever the W was going through 5 years ago is completely irrelevant to the current group of owners that now are sitting on cash cows, and the players want a percentage of that cash cow moving forward. It makes sense to me.
100%. And if you think that the WNBA is bad business, then I don't think that you're paying attention, because there were very smart and very wealthy business people that all put proposals in to be the next WNBA expansion franchise. And there were so many proposals that the WNBA had to shut down several of them, that I don't think these very smart and very wealthy business people became very wealthy by making bad investments. I mean, you bring up the Aces, how they have, 10x, even more, what their value is versus when Mark Davis bought the team. I look at the Golden State Valkyries as well. In their inaugural year, their expansion fee was $50 million. And they've been valued as a $500 million company, from $50 million to a $500 million valuation in one calendar year. So you might not be into women's basketball. That might not be your thing. That's fine. I'm not telling you it has to be your thing, but all I'm telling you is to look at the numbers and open your eyes, open your brain. You're just being ignorant and silly and frankly dumb if you think that investing into the WNBA is a bad thing. Right now, we are in a very pivotal moment in a league that is growing exponentially, and the CBA is a massive part of that, Fitz.
Look, I will remind everybody again. Here's the actual number. Mark Davis bought the Aces for $2 million in 2021. They're worth $310 million today. That's a 15,500% return. So at some point, the players want to get a percentage of that. And this is where I keep looking at the NBA,
yes,
Caroline.
Anyone would.
100%. And when we start looking at my issue here, one thing that I think we all know when you cover the league in any capacity is that players in the NBA support the WNBA players at such an incredible level. I'm waiting to see that from the NBA. The NBA has basically been using the WNBA and their ownership for years as a tax write-off, right? It's an opportunity. We're losing money over here. Don't worry about it. We're losing money. Well, now you're making money. And now is your opportunity for the NBA and ownership in the NBA, and even Adam Silver, remembering that he is in charge of the NBA, which owns the majority of these, all but one of the WNBA teams. At some point, it's up to the NBA to step around and say, hey, I know we've been losing money on it now, but we are not losing money on it currently, and this is the chance to do right by everybody involved. I'm waiting for Adam Silver and the NBA to step into this in some meaningful way, considering the fact that it is a business every one of these owners is involved in.
And that's another frustrating thing, because I think that the players and, the court of public opinion has been incredibly tough on Kathy Engelbert. Look, rightfully so. If all of the things that Nafisa Collier said in her statement were true, the things that Kathy Engelbert said about the league, about the treatment of the players, then yes, she absolutely deserves backlash. I called for Kathy Engelbert to step down, and I stand by that. I don't think that there's any sort of trust or hope that there can be, those relationships can be repaired. But the onus is also on Adam Silver. As much as we want to pile on Kathy Engelbert, and it's fair, Adam Silver also needs to take some responsibility for this as well.
Adam Silver is the person that hired Kathy Engelbert as the WNBA commissioner, and she actually reports to him. So don't get it twisted. The NBA is wildly involved in whatever happens with the WNBA 100%. Moving forward, and October 31st will be a huge date for everybody to figure out how it figures itself out. All right. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, right here, 9 to 11 for Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks for watching. Come back tomorrow. Hang out with us again.